Welcome to the weekly worship service of the First Church in Boston, a Unitarian Universalist congregation in Back Bay. First Church offers this broadcast each Sunday morning from 11 a.m. to noon here on 88.9 WERS. Our guest preacher for today is First Church member Peter Banos. His sermon today is entitled Weird is Beautiful.
On America's greatest holiday weekend, I will begin with the words of our most exuberantly American poet, Walt Whitman. Oneself I sing, a simple, separate person, yet utter the word democratic, the word en masse. Most of you whom I see know me already, but there are many of you whom I do not see. I'm Peter Banos, longtime member of this church and your guest preacher for today. And I would like to welcome all of you to First Church Boston, 66 Marlborough Street in the marvelous Back Bay neighborhood. Whether you are listening on the radio, 88 WERS FM, 88.9 on your dial, whatever they use nowadays instead of dials, or following our live stream on Facebook, or checking in at a later date to listen to it, to watch and or listen to us. You never know nowadays. Some of you may even be extraterrestrials monitoring our broadcasts in order to learn something about these weird earthlings. Good luck to all of you. Welcome wherever you are, whenever you are welcome here and now. Although I began with Whitman, and I thank our music director, Gigi Mitchell-Velasco, for that wonderful rendering of America the Beautiful. By the way, I was hoping to thank Robert Winkley, our longtime summer music leader, but he unfortunately wasn't feeling well, and with one day notice, Gigi stepped in to give us music that she could prepare with very little notice. Therefore, you're not going to hear the prelude and postlude that are in the order of service. Sorry about that, but it'll be great one way or the other. Although I'd like to also introduce our tenor and clarinetist, Alex Lyons. Although I began with Whitman, I'd like to honor our holiday, Independence Day, less from an American exceptionalist point of view than as something rooted in the European Enlightenment and related in one way or another to the struggles of all of humankind throughout time for freedom and dignity. So I chose for my cover art and the order of service a painting honoring the Paris Revolution of 1830. It's by Eugène Delacroix, and it's called Liberty Leading the People, not to be confused with Liberty Illuminating the World, which is another French artwork that stands in New York Harbor. And for those who are somewhat ambivalent about the day, given recent events, and in particular the current state of constitutional law, I will say no more about it, but simply introduce our first hymn based on a poem written in the 1840s to protest the Mexican War and the attendant expected expansion of slavery. So hymn 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. Alex?
I'm James Quixote McConnell, your announcer and broadcast engineer, alongside Craig Hildreth. Our featured musicians for today are First Church music director Gigi Mitchell-Velasco on piano and Alex Lyons tenor and clarinet. The prelude for today was America the Beautiful by Samuel A. Ward, arranged by Robert W. Thagerson, and the postlude is Liberty Bell by John Philip Sousa.
Please join me as you will. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Does anyone know of any announcements? We typically don't have many during the summer. Everyone more or less relaxes and takes it easy. Carol, what have you got?
Just a note that I believe on the 17th, Daniel Lawler will be preaching.
For those who don't know, that's our most recent intern, and it'll be a pleasure to have him back. Next week, I believe Edmund will be back for an honoring of another great American event, Ralph Waldo Emerson's speech at the Divinity School that got him evicted from Harvard for the rest of his life. One of the three things that UU Divinity students study, Emerson's Divinity School address, Channing's Unitarian Christianity, and Theodore Parker, my hero's piece on the permanent and transient in religion. Okay, so much for announcements. Time for the clarinet.
Today's featured solo is Arabesques by Paul Jean-Jean.
Thank you, Alex. The responsive reading will be number 646, Beginners, 648, I'm sorry. Beginners by Denise Levertov. And before Margaret begins, I want to share with you something I discovered about this poem a couple of years ago, the last time it was used here. I had to find a text online that I could paste into the order of service because we were totally virtual then and had to include all the texts. And I discovered that it is a complete poem. This isn't an extract, but it comes with an epigraph. It was published with an epigraph citing a poem by Swinburne. One of the world-weariest things I know in the Western poetic canon, an epitome of Weltschmerz. And when I saw that, I remembered the stanza from high school poetry anthologies, and I realized it made much better sense of Levertov's poem. It's practically a line-by-line response to it. So before we do Levertov, I will recite for you the one stanza, the penultimate stanza, the second from the end of The Garden of Proserpine. From too much love of living, from hope and fear set free, we thank with brief thanksgiving, whatever gods may be, that no life lives forever, that dead men rise up never, that even the weariest river winds somewhere safe to sea. And now, Margaret.
Thank you, Peter. Beginners. But we have only begun to love the earth. We have only begun to imagine the fullness of life. How could we tire of hope? So much is in bud. How can desire fail? We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. We've begun to envision how it might be to live as siblings with beast and flower, not as oppressors. Surely our river cannot already be hastening into the sea of non-being. Surely it cannot drag and silt all that is innocent. Not yet, not yet. There is too much broken that must be mended. Too much hurt that we've done to each other that cannot be forgiven. We have only begun to know the power that is in us if we would join our solitudes in the communion of struggle. So much is unfolding that must complete its gesture. So much is in bud. Thank you.
You're listening to the Sunday worship service of First Church in Boston. Today's broadcast was brought to you from the Ken Orton Memorial Studio in honor of the original radio voice of First Church.
Now our meditation/prayer. You who know me know that prayer is not one of my typical modes. So I offer a meditation, more a kind of thought experiment, similar to one I used a few years ago. So make yourselves comfortable. Close your eyes if you like. Do whatever you do to get into a prayerful or meditative state. Put your feet firmly on the ground. Take a few deep breaths and follow the sound of my voice. Think of something in the world, in your life, that you don't like. Something that happened to you recently, something you've read about. I can think of some examples in the news. If you think visually, make it an image or a video of something that happened that you witnessed or can imagine. If not, a form of words will do. Sit with that for a moment, that feeling that this doesn't have to be, that this could be better. And now, turn to a similar corresponding image, video, form of words, whatever works for you, of the world as it might be if that were different, if that did not happen, if that awful thing you witnessed was not there or no longer there. Now try to visualize a space or conceptualize a space separating but at the same time connecting the two images or whatever you have in your mind. Because I believe that the space between the world as we see it or perceive it in whatever way, and the world as we believe we would like it better. In that space is the source of everything important that we do in our lives, all law, morality, politics, economics, maybe all art, certainly a lot of art, certainly a lot of what happens in the name of religion lives in that space. It is about how we negotiate that space. It is there that we live and move and have our being. Make it so. And now another hymn, 143, Not in Vain the Distance Beacons. Music by Beethoven, the European theme again. Words by Tennyson. Welcome newcomers. Time for the sermon. The starting point for this is a study done in 2010 in which a number of social scientists put together a paper arguing, with a lot of peer-reviewable evidence, that most of the research done in psychology, sociology, anthropology in recent years was hopelessly compromised by the fact that participants in all of their studies, their surveys, questionnaires, whatever, overwhelmingly represent a certain small subset of humankind. This cannot be helped. You're a grad student, your advisor wants you to run a survey on something, you grab the participants who are available. And so most of them are either students or otherwise connected with university communities. And they came up with a term to summarize this identity, this almost tribe, as they invented the acronym WEIRD for Western Educated. It works as well if you hyphenate it, Western Educated, whatever country you were in, and from countries that are rich, industrialized, rich, and democratic. And I certainly identify with this classification. I think most Unitarian Universalists in the United States, at least, can see themselves in this. We don't all feel personally rich, or certainly not students. They're always looking for spending money, but as a whole, we have a higher standard of living than most of the world can dream of. And this study gave convincing evidence that there's a whole range of characteristics that make us, the weird, different from everybody else. And when I say we or us, I am not presuming that everybody listening identifies with this category, but I think many of us do. Some languages have distinct first-person plural pronouns. They can say we, meaning me and my guys, or we, meaning me and you. This is open-ended. If you feel that I am speaking about or for you, then it's an inclusive we. If you don't, take it as simply an exclusive we about those of us who do. We're Unitarian Universalists. We are inclusive, but we also believe in consent. So we won't include you if you don't want to be. Other studies have gone farther with this. They've found that Westerners in general, regardless of specific national origin, faith tradition, anything else, categorize the world differently. Some of the basic characteristics they pointed to at the beginning were a sense of personal autonomy as opposed to community ties. And this cuts across political boundaries. It's not entirely, although it is in part, a left-right thing. Even today's conservatives are motivated by some of the same sentiments as present-day liberals, although they manifest them in drastically different ways. Compare the liberal insistence on reproductive and sexual freedom and the conservative resistance to being told to wear a mask or vaccinate yourself. It's the same sense of personal autonomy. Nobody in America is a true communitarian the way many of the world's peoples are. But there are other things. This seems to rub off in our way to categorize reality. They did a study a few years ago about giving children pictures of different things and asking them to group the ones that go together. Westerners, if you give them a cow, a dog, a field of grass, will put the cow and the dog together because they're both animals. People from a lot of other countries will put the cow together with the grass because the cow eats the grass. Functionally, they're related. They're a community together. This ties in also with Jonathan Haidt's studies of moral psychology. He found 5 or maybe 6 basic dichotomies that underline most moral reasoning, and they found that Western liberals and or the weird category tend to focus on only 2 of them, fairness and care or avoidance of harm, whereas the rest of the world equally values, what are they exactly? Loyalty, authority, and sanctity. A lot of Western liberals especially don't have as strong a sense of physical repugnance to things, a visceral sense of repugnance. And then there's the liberty-oppression dichotomy, which, as I've said before, cuts across political categories in weird ways, weird in more ways than one. So, where do we go with this? First of all, I like the term weird because in comparison with, it seems less problematic than one idea that some people came up with in about 20 years ago, members of what I call the non-believing continuum or spectrum, atheists, agnostics, non-religious people, non-this, non-that, were tired of being labeled or having to label themselves by what they don't believe in or don't do. They wanted a more positive term. And in the spirit of the European Enlightenment, I suppose, they came up with bright. They are the brights. Anyone could have told them this would not go over very well. There was a flood of controversy in the sparse circles that pay attention to this sort of thing. Richard Dawkins, the great British biologist and spokesman for atheism, in his inimitable way jumped into the controversy with both feet, stirred up the waters and made it worse, arguing that calling ourselves bright doesn't imply that we think everyone else is dull, any more than people calling themselves gay aren't implying that they think everyone else is morose. Well, in any case, nothing further that I know of came of this movement. There was a website and a newsletter that I subscribed to for a while, but it didn't carry over to my current email address, so I lost sight of them. I haven't thought of them even until recently. I haven't visited the website. If it's still there, it's probably a cobweb site by now. But I thought of them as I was putting my thoughts together on weird, because weird, if we have to embrace a term, we, meaning we who fit into this category, we who are in the Western tradition of personal autonomy, rationalism, a degree of skepticism, and all the things that go with that, including grouping cows with dogs instead of with grass. If we are to call ourselves something, I think history shows that a humorously self-critical kind of term makes more friends than something that seems pompous or arrogant. So I'm happy to call myself weird, although one author in an early review of the Weird article said he suspected that even then the terms that make the acronym are a little potentially too self-congratulatory. I mean, everyone wants to be rich, and what's wrong with democratic? He argued on the basis of observations of foreign students in the United States who were asked what differences they perceived in American students from the people back home. The things they tended to focus on were body size, a tendency toward frumpy androgynous clothing, consumerism. And he pointed out that you could make an equally valid acronym, the myopics, M for materialist, Y for young, that comes with the territory, O for self-obsessed, P for pleasure-seeking, I for isolated, and S for sedentary, driving a block to get groceries, which is part of how we maintain our greater body mass index. Whatever you want to call us, we are different. And how do we, especially since we of all people are most likely to assert universal values of human freedom and dignity, the unity of humankind, how are we to deal with the fact that other people aren't like us and don't identify with us and don't see the world the same way we do? Some conservative-leaning writers, David Brooks, Ross Douthat, people I enjoy reading, people I respect, sometimes use the weird category to twit what they see as the obliviousness of what they see as the lack of self-awareness of what they see as an educated elite. And they have a point. We often do tend to see things, not realize how other people can have a different perspective on things. On the other hand, only the weird could have invented the category weird. Only the weird would have done the work and made the studies and proven that we are this way. And also be self-critical over it. So what I say is, let's embrace the weirdness. Let's own it. If, again, we, those of us who recognize ourselves in it, as I say, it doesn't sound as bad as calling ourselves the Brights. Think of the way other groups have gained over the years by adopting nicknames that their opponents called them derogatorily, the Quakers, the Mormons, until recently. I'm told that the Latter-day Saint hierarchy is now turning away from the term Mormon, but they got a lot of mileage out of it. One of the drawbacks of weirdness, on the other hand, is the same. It's the tendency towards sometimes excessive self-criticism, especially in the more rarefied reaches of academia. You get arguments over whether we really, and there is a point to this, whether we, as members of a society, a group of countries that have historically dominated the rest of the world militarily and economically, have the moral standing to criticize them. This came up a few times in my days at Columbia University, first doing graduate work in Indian religion and then working as the assistant to the area studies librarian. I remember discussions over whether, when the fatwa against Salman Rushdie's satanic verses came out, whether we were not being sufficient. Yes, everybody was properly appalled at the idea of a government halfway around the world encouraging bounty hunters and hitmen to hunt down a writer and murder him just for writing a book. And yet, people couldn't help asking themselves, shouldn't we try harder to understand where the Muslims are coming from? Or those who are, or at least an understanding that not all Muslims are in this category, but something in the faith tradition points to this, and we should try to understand it on its own terms. And I'm not against that. There are discussions among anthropologists over how to respond to odious native practices like genital mutilation and so forth. Yes, there is a point to saying that a scholar, a researcher in the field, a journalist, a diplomat has to, at some point, his job is to observe, to report, to study, and not to try to change things. On the other hand, under our professional hats, we are all human, and every human, when truly, sincerely, deeply appalled by something, has to do something about it, has to say something about it. I could go into a story. Okay, I'll do it. They say that an administrator in British India back in the 19th century was approached by a delegation who complained that he was not respecting ancestral tradition because he tried to prohibit the custom of widows burning themselves on their late husband's funeral pyre, which I must point out is not last week's speaker will insist on this. Rumni, are you listening? Is not typical of the essence of Hinduism or anything like that. Western media in those days had a heyday with it. They used these stories of widow burning to raise money for missionaries, because in those days Christianity was associated with progress, and it meant we had to save the women of these heathens from these horrible customs. Well, from what we see now happening in the name of conservative Christianity in some places, I'm not certain that converting all the Indians would have helped the women all that much. But widow burning did happen. The British did try to prevent it and prosecute it as the crime that they saw it as. And this delegation came and said, "You're interfering with our ancestral customs." And they say, and this is probably apocryphal, it's been attributed to two or three different people, "Oh, your ancestral custom is to burn widows. Very well, ours is to hang the men who burn widows. By all means, let us all follow our ancestral customs." Yes, we should be more considerate, more understanding of the rest of the world, and we, the weird, are in the best position to do this because we're starting out from a belief in unity and diversity. But that doesn't mean we have to tolerate everything. Self-criticism, self-awareness doesn't have to lead to moral paralysis. We are human. We want to make the world a better place by our best lights. And that is what we have to do. We have to be ourselves because, as someone pointed out, all the other parts are taken. We will make mistakes. We will disagree with others. We will disagree among ourselves. We will be wrong about the feasibility of what we want, or even the desirability, ultimately, of what we want. But that should not stop us. If, as some of our writers say, we, the weird, are simply one tribe among others, we are at least one tribe among others. We are at least entitled to the same right we demand on their behalf. To stand up and say to the rest of the world, "We're here. Get used to it. Weird is beautiful." And on that note, I see that it is time to turn to the ancestral custom of ours of taking a collection for the care and sustenance of our community. If you prefer to donate to the church by text, there are instructions for it here. You can send a contribution by texting your dollar amount to 617-917-5610, or you can send a check to the church office. You'll find the address on our website if you don't have the order of service in front of you. If you prefer to do it if you're here presently and prefer to do it the old-fashioned way, the plate is going around, and we have this other very nice custom of rewarding ourselves with music. First, how do we do this now? The song comes first. Okay, Alex?
And now for the offertory, Beautiful City by Stephen Schwartz. If you'd like to support the work of this church with a financial donation, you may write out a check to First Church Boston and mail it to 66 Marlborough Street, 02116. You can also donate via text. Simply text the dollar amount, 5, 10, 20, etc. to 617-917-5610. You'll receive confirmation by email. Thank you.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now our final hymn, We'll Build a Land, number 121. And now it is time, almost, to go forth into the world with courage and optimism, even though you know all the facts, as I think Wendell Berry said. Navigate that space between the world as it is and the world we think we would like better. But first, one more piece of music, and I have no idea what it's going to be, thanks to the last-minute replacement in our program. So, Gigi, surprise us, and the rest of you, enjoy.
Please feel free to join us live each Sunday at 66 Marlborough Street at the corner of Berkeley Street and Back Bay. If you would like more information about programs, services, or memberships of First Church, please visit the website www.firstchurchboston.org or send an email to office@firstchurchboston.org. I'm James Quixote McConnell, your announcer and broadcast engineer. Thank you so much for listening. We will now return you to the studios of WERS.